Hi, everyone. Welcome. We're so glad you're joining us today. It's so nice to see the sun shining, and it was really fun to see the pictures on the at the beginning of the webinar, seeing all of our little friends. My name is Jill Smalley, and I work with Peter. It's a pleasure to work with Peter. I've been at Key School for 3 years now, and I want to tell you that I'm in over 30 years of teaching. And when we moved back to the Annapolis area, I looked at several schools because I wanted to be at a school that fit my experiences and my belief in education and how we treat children. And the minute I walked into Key School, I got chills. I walked through the classrooms and saw all the great things going on, and I immediately knew that is where I wanted to have my next career of teaching. And I'm delighted to be here. I've learned so much from working with Peter. He's an awesome educator, and I've learned so much from him. We work very, very closely together with all the teachers in the lower school, the Maker Tech, the music, all of them. And we try to coordinate our programs to make it the best learning experience for your children. I know that Peter has some slides he wants to share with you, but I can reiterate from what many of the speakers that you heard on the screen, that the most important thing to us in the beginning of the year is to get to know each one of your children and find out where they are in their learning process, where they are with the reading, where they are with the writing. It's kind of like being a doctor, and it takes several weeks to figure that out. Then once we know where your children are, we want to be able to develop them and move them forward in a way that is going to help them throughout the year. One of the big words we use in fourth grade is we talk about growing our brains, and how do we grow our brains. And part of that is being brave and being able to make a mistake. And we really emphasize that mistakes are a part of learning. So if we make a mistake, we're going to be able to grow from that mistake. So mistakes are okay. And we want the children to know that they are in a safe environment where they can make mistakes and they're not going to be made fun of, but that we all can grow from those mistakes. Peter, do you want to take off from here?
All righty, I will. Welcome, everyone. I'm going to tell you a little bit about our language arts and our math programs, our social studies programs. Just a little bit of background. I've been teaching at Key for 17 years, and I'm a parent of 2 Key students, one an alum and one about to be an alum. So I have some insights about the school, I guess. As Jill was saying, fourth grade is sort of, we call it they are the leaders of the lower school. They are the upper level of the lower school. So we treat them as leaders. We in their expectations for them as learners, and how they role model for the rest of the lower school students. Our humanities curriculum is based around this idea of cultural studies, and we study cultures from different parts of the world and historical periods. But we're also exploring individual cultures and family cultures of our students. And who are they as people, who are they as families, and what do they bring to the classroom and as learners. But we like to use literature in Key School and overall, and especially in the fourth grade, as an entry point into studying about these different groups. And we're looking at their geography, of course. And we're looking at the contributions that they've made as people to society and to the world in general. And we like to compare cultures also and look at similarities and differences. So we begin the year with our study right now, the Eastern Woodland Indians, focusing on the Powhatan and the people who were living here where we are in what's now Annapolis, and acknowledging the origins of them, and the land that we are on is their land. And then we also focus on the Eastern Woodland Indians of what's known as the Iroquois and their nation. And so we kind of look at both and their similarities and differences. And we look at them in their traditions as we know them historically, but we also want to look at them today in the modern age. So we read this story, Eagle Song, which is by Joseph Bruchac, who's a Native American writer and has a Mohawk boy as the central person. And we're looking at how his life as a modern Mohawk boy encompasses a lot of the traditions of his culture. that the children have learned about in a historical context. So we kind of try to make that connection from the historical to the modern day. We're going to move on from there to our study of the Caribbean and the cultures of the Caribbean and how that is a mixed culture with many influences from Europe and Africa. And we read this book, The Jumbies, which is written by a Trinidadian author, Tracy Baptiste, and has a Trinidadian girl as the protagonist. So we're trying to look at things through the eyes of the people who live there. And while that book has a lot of Trinidadian folktales and Caribbean folktales that we'll also study, her monsters, kind of some monsters in the book, and they're actually based on some of the more familiar characters from ancient Greece. So it's kind of nice that we move into our ancient Greek and Greek mythology unit. And we like to study ancient Greece and Greek mythology, because it's so exciting and the kids really love it when they read about all these adventures and monsters and heroes. But also about the facts that the Greek culture, philosophy, mathematics, art, architecture play such an important part in Western civilization and then, of course, American civilization. So we like to talk about those connections too. And then we end the year with our study of the medieval Islamic world. And in that unit, we're focusing on the discoveries and inventions that were made in the medieval Islamic world and how they influenced the Renaissance and later civilization, later culture after that. And it's a great unit because it's very unfamiliar to the majority of our students. And they find out that a lot of things that they thought they knew about were actually created by people they did not realize, people who came from what was the Hindu culture and the Islamic culture, and how it was a great time of learning and cross-fertilization of ideas. So those are sort of the background ones that we study. Let's see if this slide wants to move for me. So, of course, while we're doing this, we're practicing developing the comprehension and reading fluency. And the list here is where we kind of begin in the year and where we hope to end as the children get older and as they've done more work with reading and discussion and thinking about ideas. So most of them are very concrete due to their age and their experience. And as they move through the year, they start to become better to interpret and to analyze. And we will work on all these skills throughout the year with the different reading materials that we use, which are both fiction in nature and nonfiction in nature. And kind of going back and forth. And this will be in written exercises and also group discussion. Of course, we're also working on developing written expression. It's sort of the last thing to develop for many kids, sort of the input first and then the output. But we work on a variety of writing tasks. We are spending a lot of time with answering comprehension questions for writing. And the second bullet, the supporting ideas with examples, which becomes very important as the students move through Key School and when they get older. So we start them at a fairly young age with, you've got this great idea. What's your example from the story to support that? And of course, throughout the process, working on your writing mechanics so that your reader can understand clearly what it is that you want to say. Research writing, of course, practicing note-taking, the idea of summarizing, how do you pull information from a text out so that people, you will understand it and you're not just plagiarizing and copying. We work on topic sentence development and again, the revision editing. And we do different types of story writing and creative writing. We do a lot of poetry writing, especially we've been doing in the beginning of the year, looking at poetry, collecting and writing our own poetry. And a lot of our story writing is either personal narrative work about the children's experiences and lives, or we look at we create historical fiction where we use the structures of the books they are reading, and they use that as a jumping off point to create their own stories. One of our examples is we write the lost chapter of the Odyssey. The children read a version of the Odyssey during our Greek unit, and then they write a lost chapter, another adventure that happens to Odysseus and his men at some point in the story. So for a lot of writers, that is a nice scaffold for them because they already know the setting and they have an idea about the character traits of the people involved, and they've had some experience with some of the obstacles that he has faced. So they've got some stuff to work with. It's not as bad as being faced with that sort of blank page and not knowing what to do. All right, mathematics. Our big goal is mathematical thinking and computation. We don't focus just on one. We're going back and forth. How do you use those computational skills to then delve deeper as a mathematical thinker? These are our units of study, not necessarily in this particular order, but these are the ones that we will get through during the year. When we get into multiplication and division, we do multi-digit multiplication and division to 3 and 4 digit work. Fractions and decimals is sort of looking at fractions as sort of a somewhat beginning level with different types of fractions of sets, and adding like fractions with like denominators, and adding and subtracting decimals. And data analysis, not only looking at different types of graphs, but also looking at graphs with legends and how do you read those and interpret the legend on a graph. A lot of work with place value. Number theory is a ton of fun. We're in that right now. Looking at numbers is with the characteristics of numbers. We talk about characters and stories as having characteristics, but we also then talk about how numbers have characteristics. They can be multiples, they can be prime, they can be composite, they could be a triangular number, a square number, and sorts of different patterns that start to evolve as we're doing that kind of work. We don't have a set math text in 4th grade. We use from a variety of different texts and materials that we have created on our own. Let's see, I think, yeah. All right, so then we kind of take all those skills and we try to apply them. We have some different problem solving strategies that we'll work on during the year. One is unorganized list. Another one is open timeline for doing time problems. And another one is what's called bar modeling. Sometimes you might notice Singapore math. It's a great visual tool for doing different types of problems, especially it comes in great when we're doing story problems involving fractions. So kids get very good with that. We have puzzle packet series for extensions for kids to work at their own pace as they finish other tasks. And we will teach the kids how to solve word problems. All word problems in 4th grade are sort of 2-step word problems. And students will also learn to write their own word problems throughout the year. So they'll kind of getting good about solving things that have been presented to them, but then they also have to generate the work on their own. We'll also do that when we're doing comprehension. There'll be many times where the children have to create the questions themselves about what they're studying, and and then have their classmates answer it. So we kind of put them on the spot to do that work. But
Peter.
Jill, yeah.
Okay, so self-regulatory skills and collaborative skills. One of the big things we're really working on with our kids is planning steps and organizing materials and tools. And this has been especially challenging for our 4th graders because there is so much expected of them now, going back and forth from distance learning to the hybrid model we had. So we've been working really hard with them about keeping their things organized and having the tools that they need. One of the other things that we work hard on is ask questions to gain understanding of what they're learning about. We want them to feel safe, as I said earlier, that they can ask a question and not feel intimidated in doing it in that class. Another thing that we really hard on in the classroom is listening respectfully to each other's opinions. At the beginning of the year, all the classrooms create a class charter, and the children talk about how they want to feel in the classroom. And then we talk about ways that we can create a classroom environment where they can be able to have those feelings. So one part that always comes up is listening respectfully to others' opinions and ideas, and learning how to respond back. Say, I hear what you have to say, Peter, but this is another idea I have, or I think differently about that subject. This is my opinion. Contributing to and supporting group work is also, we really want our children to feel comfortable contributing their ideas and to help each other with their work. We did a activity the other day when we did distance learning, and it was really fun. We paired the kids up in breakout rooms, and they had some math problems to solve. And I got to go from breakout room to breakout room. And it was so fun to hear these kids collaborating with each other, trying to figure out whether their answer was right or their partner's answer was right, and listening to them trying to reason and come up with different ideas. So this is just a really important part of the fourth grade and of Key School, is working and contributing and learning from each other's ideas.
So I think that's kind of the end of our formal part of our presentation. We're able to take questions from people, and I think I can see everybody. I hope so. Does anyone have a question? And you can also, I think, put them in the chat too if you'd prefer.
Yes, hi. I do have a question, especially as we're looking at fourth grade coming from a different school, different approach to teaching. So how are you accommodating the new students that are coming in fourth grade to Key for the first time? They haven't maybe had a tinkering lab part of their prior school experience, where they haven't had as much exposure to a foreign language. Like we're looking for our daughter, and she hasn't studied French. So where do you bring these kids that are going to be new in fourth grade, and how do you make sure they get, you assess them, you evaluate them where they are in their knowledge, but how do you make sure they catch up a little bit with the kids that have been in the lower school from the beginning?
Do you want to take that, Jill? Because you have a new student.
Too. For the past 2 years, I've had new students, and for me, it was amazing to watch all the specials come right into me at the beginning of the year. We got a new student. I had a little boy who'd never had French before, and the French teacher spent extra time with that child to help him get caught up. Same with music. He hadn't done a recorder, and they do recorders in music in third grade. So he just spent extra time working with them to get caught up. The same thing with Maker Tech. Carol Mahoney was amazing. I know he hasn't had this, and I'm going to give him some extra time. So I think the kids, initially, it might be a little, worrisome for them, but I think they see right away that we are there to support them in every way to make them get on board and help them as much as we can.
How difficult has it been this year, considering the very different circumstances that you are bringing new students in?
Right. So this year was different because the first couple of weeks of the way Key School did it is we had a phasing in process. So our first 2 days were virtual, which was really weird for me as a teacher, getting to know my kids. But there's also some real positives about this, and I try to really focus on the positives, but I want to get back to your question. So I had a little girl new in my class, little Sydney, came in, and she came in and met with me, and we had some special one-on-one time where she got to see where her desk was going to be, where her cubby was. I walked her around, showed where the restrooms were, and we got a chance to bond, just the two of us. And then through our Zooms, which we were doing breakout rooms. We were doing a lot of activities where the kids get to know each other. And then we were back on campus every other day. So she slowly got to know the kids, and we're just with our pods right now. So I have to tell you, I am so close to this class. I cannot tell you. I have 13 kids. I adore them. I love them. We've had so much fun being together for 3 weeks, and we know that's going to change, go back and forth. But they are so close to each other. And I can tell this new student, I heard from the parents right away that she feels so connected to the other kids. And because the kids are in their pods all day, meaning my 13 kids, and I do have a gateway. They do everything together. They have their snack outside together in a special area where just my class is. Their recesses change where they're on the playground, and they're always together. So these kids have become like a real close family, is what it's like. So it is different.
Can I add one thing, Jill?
Yeah.
I think another thing that we did that was helpful is we meet with every family at the beginning of the year, and for short conversations. Tell us about your kid. What do you want us to know about them as learners, as people? So trying to get to know them that way and get to know you as parents also that way has been extremely helpful in a regular year and super helpful in the COVID year when we don't get to see people face to face. Usually parents are around all the time, and so we kind of get to see you and chat with you a lot. Dismissal, drop off in the morning, things going on during the day. So those are
So
other
we
ways.
tried to extend that also by meeting with parents and then having times where we just set up Zoom and saying if anybody wants to meet with us or would like to touch base on how your child is doing, then we're really open to that, and I think it helps develop our partnership because really, truly, we can't do this without being partners with you. There's nobody who knows this child better than you, and all that information and support you can give us helps us when we are working with your children.
That is helpful. Thank you.
Are there any other questions from anyone else? Something they're wondering about we can help you with? Well, I don't know, Roz, if there's no more questions, what are they supposed to do next?
Well, and I'm here representing the admission office, even though I handle middle school admissions. Makiba couldn't be everywhere at the same time. So Makiba Barnes is your contact. But if you are interested, we are, for as long as the county will let us, we're doing tours of campus off hours. So after school or on weekends. I think mostly after school, because Makiba's kids play soccer on the weekends. So if you would like to walk around, we can't go in buildings, but we can walk you around. Again, for the time being, I worry that that's going to get shut down somehow, but that's a potential next step, but not required. We don't track your level of engagement in the process or anything like that. But if you're interested in applying, the application is online and it does kind of walk you through the steps, but Makiba is your go-to resource for sort of how to go through the process. Often people do ask about space, and it really does come with attrition. I don't know if Tom talked about this in the beginning of the webinar, but we take all applications through mid-January and then get you an answer by mid-February. By that point, we know how many spaces we have in fourth grade, and as I said, it comes from any third graders that don't re-enroll. If there are any spaces now, obviously those would factor into it too. But and after that we do rolling admissions. But it is a good idea to get in the process early, have that application complete by mid-January, just so you have the best possibility for a space that comes available.
Thank you.
Sure. I will add, this open houses are just really sort of a broad brush overview and the beginning of developing a relationship where you're learning about us and we're learning about your kids. So this isn't a one-off. I'm available, Makiba's available. We want to connect you if you wanted to talk to a specialist or another parent. That we want to do all that we can so that sort of what Key School is about. It's a partnership through high school, we hope. And so it's something that warrants some due diligence. So let us know how we can help.
I have a question. My third grader is in Spanish. So he would then have to go to French and then back to Spanish.
If he wanted to, or he could stay with French, or go back to Spanish. Yeah, that would be his choice.
Okay.
Get older, I think some kids do 2 languages. If they're really into languages, as they move into the French and Spanish. If you,
I had one that did 4 through high school, so just moved around. So we really look at the language learning is about how to learn a language, how to learn about a culture through a language. There is obviously a lot of similarity between French and Spanish, and so it's a somewhat easy transition. They're learning about language structure, and they're structured very similarly in terms of masculine and feminine. So it may seem jarring and disruptive, but what we find is that it's not really once kids get into it, and they do have, as Jill mentioned, the support of those specialists that will help them through that transition. And then your child has the choice when they hit 6th grade of, now they've been exposed to 2 languages, and which one would they prefer to pursue?
In the original talk earlier, they didn't mention what language 5th grade.
So
learns.
5th grade continues with French.
Okay.
The option to 6th grade or to Spanish begins in 6th grade.
Okay. One other question is, I have 2 children. One, I would say, is able to move now, or I would want to move now, and the other I would not yet. So with that being said, is there some sort of, preference over children that, have siblings at the school? Or, I mean, other schools I've been to, like we moved here from another state. So chose a school, kind of are going with it right now, not 100% sure how it's going to work out. So with that being said, in Pennsylvania, if you had a sibling there, I don't want to say you had preference, but yes, you did. Especially because, your brother, your sister, whomever was already there.
Yeah.
So I'm just curious how that would work out.
Yes, so there is preference for space for siblings. They have to be admitted. There's, I would say a little benefit of the doubt, but they still have to go through the admission process and be a good fit for the school. But given that sort of first bar, then preferential space is given to siblings. And in fact, there's an earlier sibling deadline for application for that very reason.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure.
All right.
Another question popped up as Ross was speaking. How much do you see of your graduating 4th class? How many of them are they leaving when they start middle school? And what are some of the reasons for leaving? 0. Fantastic.
Yeah. It's really, there are, outside of, family issues that, relocations and things like that, we don't have that. There's not any one place where there's a tremendous amount of attrition except for 8th to 9th. And I say tremendous, it's still, 8 or 10 a year out of the whole class. And what happens there often is a student wants to play football and Key doesn't offer football, or just wants that bigger high school experience. We often have kids leave for 9th and come back in 10th because big seems so intriguing, and then suddenly they realize big may mean less personal. But that really is the only place where we see kids sort of throw it all open to other options. But our 5th grade is the beginning of our middle school. But as you know, most public schools end in 5th grade. So we see a huge influx in 6th. A lot of families come in 5th because they get sort of a jump start on space, because there is 6th is sort of a more competitive entry year, but it's not because 6th is not a bigger year because we see huge attrition from one to the other. It's more that we usually, when we're in our normal situation, have 2 sections of 4th grade and we expand to 3 sections of 5th grade. So we have more spaces, but don't fill them as much because it's not a natural transition point. But we usually see kids, continue through. And I'd say of our graduating class, Peter, you may have some history on this too. We probably have, a quarter to a third of the kids are what we call lifers.
Yeah.
Who have been at Key from the beginning. But we also get we get new kids to almost every grade every year, with the exception of 12th grade.
Right. The one that I did have move, I put my hand up 0 and I thought the one I did move, the parents had a job change and moved out of state. So.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. Well, then, if that is all, thank you all so much for coming and spending time with us today. And we look forward to hopefully seeing you and your kids in the future.
In person.
Yes.
So enjoy the rest of your weekend, everyone. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.